Two bikes may look identical on paper, yet one will outlast the other by years while quietly saving you thousands. That difference isn't luck, and it isn't branding, it's engineering. In this video, every engine type is stripped down to its bare metal, what it truly costs, where it fails, and why it behaves the way it does. No marketing, no myths, just physics. Because if what lies beneath the tank isn't understood, a motorcycle isn't being bought, a problem is. And there is no better place to begin than the single cylinder, where every strength is laid bare and every flaw has nowhere to hide. So we start at the bottom, with no tricks, no smoothing, and no disguise. The single cylinder, the soul, that famous thump, sounds romantic. It isn't. It's one heavy hit, then a long pause. Impact, silence, impact. It feels more like farm equipment than a precision tool. Torque shows up early, punches hard, then disappears. No steady pull, no flow, just interruption. What people call character is really uneven delivery. The physics are as raw as it gets. One combustion every full cycle. Half the time, the engine is doing nothing but coasting. Those gaps are huge, and that's the flaw, but also the advantage. On dirt, that pause lets the rear tire recover. Instead of spinning non-stop, it grabs, releases, then grabs again. That's why singles hook up where smoother engines slide. Now the cost, one piston stopping and reversing direction over and over with nothing to cancel it out. No opposing force, no symmetry, just mass changing direction violently. The result is shake, constant, unavoidable. Counterweights and balance shafts help, but they don't fix it. They just calm it down enough to live with. Cost is where this engine wins. One cylinder, one head, fewer parts, cheap to build, cheap to fix. That's why it shows up everywhere, from basic commuters to tough dual sports. Bikes like the Honda XR650L and Kawasaki KLR 650 didn't earn respect for refinement. They earned it by refusing to die. The verdict, honest, completely. What you feel is exactly what's happening, but honesty has limits. It shakes because it can't balance. It fades at speed because power isn't continuous. It thrives down low and falls apart when pushed. This isn't about performance. It's about survival. And eventually one piston stops being enough. If this raw simplicity speaks to you, drop a hype, hit that like button and subscribe. That kind of support is exactly what keeps us breaking down engines the way manufacturers won't. So what happens when one more cylinder is added and refinement is suddenly promised? This is the parallel twin. It looks like progress. It sounds like progress. But what you actually get is something far more calculated. Compared to a single, this should feel like a revelation. Twice the combustion events, less waiting between pulses, power that flows instead of hitting in isolated thumps. And yes, it's smoother. But smoother doesn't mean better. It means quieter in personality. A traditional 360-degree crank fires, both pistons together, giving a steady, even beat. A 180-degree setup spaces things out more evenly across the cycle. Both are logical, both are efficient, and both are emotionally flat. So the industry stepped in and asked a different question. What if we make it feel uneven on purpose? That's where the 270-degree crank enters. Now the engine hesitates, then lunges. The rhythm staggers. It starts to sound like something with intent, something with weight behind each pulse. People call that character. But it's not character, it's choreography. The physics, two pistons sharing a crankshaft. Sounds simple, it isn't. Because they don't act on the same point, their motion creates a twisting force along the length of the engine. Not a clean up and down movement, but a subtle rocking, forward, backward, over and over again. This is the rocking couple. You can't eliminate it. You can only choose how it shows up. With a 360-degree crank, both pistons move together, stacking their forces and sending vibration straight through the chassis. With a 180-degree layout, they oppose each other, reducing one problem while creating another somewhere else. The 270-degree version splits the difference, sacrificing balance in exchange for feel. None of these are true solutions. They're compromises, carefully chosen trade-offs. Now think about it. Have you ever ridden a parallel twin that genuinely felt exciting? Or did it come off as a bit manufactured? Drop your experience in the comments. Real rider feedback is what separates theory from reality and helps everyone here make smarter decisions. So balanced shafts are added, spinning masses designed to cancel out the chaos. More parts, more friction, more cost. Not elegance, just damage control. The cost of entry. This is where the parallel twin earns its place. It's compact, it's narrow, it fits into a frame without argument. One cylinder head, shared components, fewer moving pieces to assemble, fewer things to go wrong. From a manufacturing standpoint, this engine is a dream. From a business standpoint, it's inevitable. The Hall of Fame, the Yamaha MT-07, took the uneven crank concept and made it mainstream, giving riders something that felt alive without demanding a premium. Meanwhile, the Triumph Bonneville built an entire legacy on this layout, long before modern tricks tried to disguise its shortcomings. These machines didn't succeed because the engine is flawless. They succeeded because it's just convincing enough. The verdict: this is the engine of compromise, refined to an art form. It fixes the single's rough edges without stepping into real complexity. It delivers usable power, manageable vibration, and a price tag that keeps factories smiling. But left alone, it has no voice. Everything you feel from it has been tuned, adjusted, and carefully engineered into existence. It works exactly as intended, which raises a question most riders never ask. If you have to manufacture personality, this carefully, what happens when the engine has it naturally? That's where things stop pretending, and where the next configuration begins to show its hand. Now we leave good enough behind and step into something far more intentional. The V-twin. The soul is where the conversation shifts. People stop quoting specifications and start describing sensations. That uneven cadence, the offbeat rhythm that sounds almost lazy, then suddenly forceful. What some call potato-potato is not folklore, it's timing, because the firing is not evenly spaced. In most V-twins, both connecting rods share a single crank pin. That decision alone shapes everything. Combustion events arrive unevenly, one strike, a pause, then another. Not symmetrical, not predictable, but unmistakable. That irregularity is what people interpret as life, and the way it delivers power follows the same philosophy. Large pistons, longer strokes, fewer, heavier pulses. It does not build speed gracefully. It hits early, pulls hard through the middle, then fades before things get truly fast. This is not finesse. This is presence. The physics is where the illusion starts to fracture. That shared crank pin simplifies construction, but it locks the engine into its uneven rhythm. You cannot separate the sound from the structure. Fix one, and you lose the other. Then comes balance, or the lack of it. A tight V angle keeps the engine compact, but increases vibration. A wider angle smooths things out, but stretches the entire machine. Every degree is a negotiation between size and stability. And then there is heat. One cylinder sits behind the other, breathing in whatever warmth the front one leaves behind. The rear runs hotter. Cooling becomes inconsistent. Over time, that imbalance wears on everything: efficiency, durability, performance. Liquid cooling helps, but that is not a solution. It is a workaround. Packaging only adds to the struggle. This engine does not spread outward, it extends forward and back. It demands space in the frame, altering weight distribution and forcing compromises in handling. The cost of entry, more involved than a parallel twin, but still manageable. Two heads, more components, more complexity, but not enough to scare manufacturers away. It is complexity with a purpose. The Hall of Fame, the Harley-Davidson shovelhead, built its reputation on raw, imperfect feel, while the Suzuki SV650 showed that the same layout could be practical, approachable, and still unmistakably mechanical. Different philosophies, same foundation. The verdict: this is not an efficient design. It runs hotter than it should. It stretches longer than ideal. It vibrates in ways engineers spend years trying to manage, but none of that stopped it. Because this engine does something most others avoid, it refuses to disappear. Every pulse, every shake, every uneven beat reminds you it is there. Not optimized, not refined, but undeniable. And that creates a problem engineers could not ignore. Because once you accept the character, you start wondering, what if you could keep it and remove the flaws? That question reshapes everything, and it leads directly to the next evolution, the L-twin. Up to this point, we've gone from raw simplicity to carefully engineered compromise, but the real shift is only just beginning. So tell me in the comments, where do you stand? Do you prefer character or do you chase pure performance? And while you're there, like the video and subscribe to the channel because we're just getting into the engines that push this even further. Now we take the V-twin and force it to behave. This is the L-twin. Same foundation, different discipline. The soul changes immediately. The loose, wandering pulse tightens up. Each hit feels placed, intentional. Still alive, still uneven, but no longer sloppy. Torque comes in with authority, then carries forward instead of fading out. It doesn't just punch, it drives. And as revs build, it holds its shape. This isn't brute force anymore. It's controlled aggression. The reason sits in the angle, 90 degrees. At that layout, primary forces cancel each other out. One piston rises as the other balances it. No heavy counterweights needed, no band-aid solutions. The engine stops fighting itself, at least on the first level. That's not branding, that's geometry doing its job. But nothing is free. Secondary motion still introduces vibration. The pistons don't travel in perfect harmony, and a rocking effect remains. Reduced, yes. Gone, no. And the firing order stays uneven, giving that familiar staggered rhythm, only now it's deliberate instead of chaotic. Then comes the cost. A true L-twin, especially from Ducati, brings complexity with it. Desmodromic valves replace traditional springs, using mechanical control to open and close with precision at high revs. It's a clever solution to a real problem and a demanding one to live with. More parts, tighter tolerances, constant attention. Machines like the Ducati 916 proved what this layout could do. Sharp, fast, unforgettable, but never cheap, not to buy, not to maintain. This is refinement with a price tag. It corrects imbalance without losing identity. It delivers feel without chaos. But it asks more from everyone involved. Engineer, mechanic, rider. You gain control. You inherit complexity. And that raises a different question. What if balance didn't need correction at all? What if it was built into the layout from the start? That's where everything shifts, to the boxer twin, where we stop managing imbalance and remove it at the source. Enter the boxer twin. The first impression isn't noise or shake, it's calm. The engine settles into the bike instead of disturbing it. Then you crack the throttle, and the whole machine gives a subtle sideways nudge. That's torque reaction. The crank runs front to back, so when it spins, it gently twists the chassis. Not aggressive, but always there. Out on the road, it feels planted. Low speed control is almost effortless. The weight sits low and the bike carries it with quiet confidence. The physics are beautifully simple. Two pistons, directly opposed. When one moves out, the other moves in. Their forces cancel each other. Perfect primary balance, built into the layout. No counterweights doing damage control, no extra shafts chasing vibration. Secondary movement still exists, but it's minor. The engine doesn't fight itself every time the pistons reverse direction. Then there's mass placement. Those cylinders sit low and wide, dropping the center of gravity. That's why these bikes feel more manageable than their size suggests. But that same layout creates a new problem: width. Those heads stick out into open air. Every lean angle, every tight space, every off-road obstacle, you feel it. You're always aware of where those cylinders are. Cooling, though, is excellent. Both sides sit fully exposed, pulling in clean airflow. No hidden hot spots, no trapped heat. This isn't a cheap design. Precision matters, and machines like the BMW R 1250 GS prove why it exists, built for distance, stability, and real-world use. The verdict: One of the most logically sound engines out there. Balanced, predictable, durable but wide, exposed, a little unconventional. It doesn't chase excitement, it delivers control, and that trade pushes engineers in a different direction, towards something tighter, more compact. The inline triple. The inline triple changes the rhythm completely. It doesn't thump like a twin, it doesn't wail like a four, it lives in between, and that's exactly why it feels alive. There's torque down low, but it doesn't fade when the revs rise. It pulls, then keeps pulling. The spacing between each firing isn't perfectly even, but it's close enough to stay relentless. Not smooth in a sterile way, more like constant forward pressure. That sensation comes from continuity. 3 cylinders spread their work across a full cycle, so power arrives more often, with less empty space in between. More importantly, something inside is always moving. The crank never fully relaxes. It carries motion instead of restarting it. That's why triples spin up quicker than twins. They build momentum and hold on to it. But there's a problem you can't ignore. Odd numbers refuse to balance cleanly. With 3 pistons, one is always left without a partner. Forces don't cancel perfectly. A slight rocking motion stays in the system, no matter what you do. It's not violent, but it's always present. So engineers step in with balance shafts, adding parts just to keep things civilized. Now cost starts creeping upward. Another cylinder, more valve train, tighter packaging, extra hardware to manage vibration. It's no longer simple, it's deliberate. Bikes like the Triumph Speed Triple and Yamaha M09 built their reputation on this feeling: punchy, responsive, a little unruly. The verdict, maybe the best compromise so far. It fills the gaps, it builds momentum, it delivers usable power across the range. But it's still not complete. Balance isn't solved, just controlled. And that almost leads to the next step, where we arrive at the industry's favorite answer, the one held up as the benchmark. The inline 4, at low speed it's almost uneventful, smooth, quiet, controlled. You roll on the throttle and it responds cleanly, but without drama. No surge, no urgency, just a steady climb. Then the revs rise and everything changes. The engine comes alive, airflow settles, combustion tightens, and the power builds without interruption. It doesn't hit, it stacks, stronger, faster, smoother, all the way to the top. Calm turns into relentless pull. 2 personalities, 1 machine. This is where the inline 4 earns its name. 4 pistons moving in pairs, 2 rising, 2 falling. Primary forces cancel naturally, so the engine stays composed without heavy correction. Power arrives evenly, one event after another, creating a continuous drive with no gaps, no hesitation. That smooth delivery allows higher engine speed, and higher speed means more power. Simple equation, but there's a detail most riders never hear about. Secondary motion. Because of the way pistons travel, their speed isn't perfectly uniform. They accelerate and decelerate unevenly through each stroke. In a 4-cylinder layout, those variations don't fully cancel. The result is a fine, high-frequency vibration, subtle, but always present. You don't see it, you feel it in the bars, the pegs, the seat. That's not a flaw in manufacturing. That's built into the geometry, and none of this comes cheap. 4 cylinders, more valves, precision across every moving part. At high engine speeds, even small errors become expensive problems. This is engineering pushed toward performance, not simplicity. Machines like the Honda CB 750 and Kawasaki Z1 didn't just use this layout, they defined it. The verdict, the standard for speed: smooth, powerful, scalable, but not perfect. It hides its character behind revs, and that subtle vibration never truly leaves. So engineers asked a different question. What if the layout itself changed? Enter the V4. This is not just an engine, it is a declaration. The V4 feels compressed, mechanically dense, like every moving part has been forced closer together than comfort would allow. The power does not build lazily, and it does not spiral endlessly upward. It strikes, hard, controlled, deliberate. There is a tension to it, a sense that something is being held back, Barely, and the sound reflects that. Depending on the crank design, the firing order staggers just enough to break symmetry. Not chaotic, not smooth, something in between. A rhythm that feels intentional, almost calculated. It sounds expensive, because it is. Ride something like the Honda VF-R 750 or the Ducati Panigale V4, and the message is immediate. This was not built for ease. This was built to prove a point. At this level, we're no longer talking about practicality, we're talking about engineering philosophy. So I want to hear from you directly. Would you actually ride something like this daily, or is it just something you admire from a distance? Drop it in these comments. The V-angle is not styling, it is strategy. By splitting the cylinders into two banks, engineers spread out the forces that would otherwise stack on top of each other. Vibrations are not removed, they are redistributed into something more manageable. The crankshaft becomes shorter as well. Less flex at high speed, more stability when the engine is pushed to extremes. Power delivery sharpens as a result. And then there is packaging. Front to back, this engine is compact. That allows it to sit closer to the center of the motorcycle, tightening mass around the core. Handling improves not because of tuning, but because of placement. But none of this comes free. Heat builds quickly. Rear cylinders run hotter. Cooling systems grow more complex. Maintenance becomes intrusive. Access disappears behind layers of tightly packed machinery. This is where reality asserts itself. Two-cylinder heads, more camshafts, more valves, more precision required at every step. Manufacturing slows down. Costs climb. Servicing becomes an event, not a routine. This is not efficient engineering. This is committed engineering. The Hall of Fame, the Honda VFR 750 proved durability could coexist with complexity. The Ducati Panigale V4 removed restraint entirely and chased performance without apology. Different intentions, same obsession. The verdict. This is what happens when compromise becomes deliberate. It delivers compact power, high-speed stability, precision under pressure. But it demands everything in return. Money, attention, effort. This is not for convenience. This is for those who accept that performance has a cost and choose to pay it anyway. Because once you experience this level of control, a different question begins to surface. What if performance was not the goal at all? What if stability mattered more than speed? That shift changes everything, and it leads somewhere quieter. The flat four? The flat four doesn't wake you up. It doesn't growl. It doesn't shake. It doesn't even ask for your attention. You start the bike, roll on the throttle, and somewhere along the way you realize nothing is happening. Not because it's slow, but because it refuses to make a scene about it. Power arrives like a quiet agreement. No hit, no surge, no theatrics. Just a steady, unbroken push that feels like it could go on forever. If you've spent time on something like the Ducati 916 or the Harley-Davidson Shovelhead, this feels almost unsettling. Those engines talk to you. This one just nods and keeps moving. And that silence, it's not a flaw. It's the entire design philosophy. Lay the cylinders flat, oppose the pistons, and the chaos cancels itself out. One moves in, the other moves out. No fighting forces, no dramatic countermeasures. What you get is an engine that barely disturbs its own operation. But the real advantage isn't just smoothness, it's placement. All that mass sits low, really low. The bike doesn't feel like it's balancing on top of something. It feels like it's anchored to the ground. At parking lot speeds, it resists tipping. On the highway, it holds a line like it's carved into the pavement. Machines like the Honda GL 1000 Goldwing didn't just use this layout, they built an identity around it. But physics always collects its debt. That width has consequences. Lean far enough, and metal meets asphalt. Cooling the rear cylinders becomes a negotiation, and quick direction changes, not its specialty. This is stability over agility, every single time. From a build standpoint, it's a commitment. Complicated to engineer, but once sorted, it becomes stubbornly durable. Low vibration means less fatigue. Parts last. Owners age before the engine does. So here's the truth. This isn't built to excite you. It's built to remove effort from existence. Mile after mile, hour after hour, it just keeps going. Calm, controlled, unbothered. And that's exactly why some riders walk away from it. Because when you strip away all the struggle, you might start wondering where the feeling went. And that question, right there, is what pushed engineers towards something far less composed and far more dangerous. The square four. This isn't refinement. This is what happens when you chase power so hard the engine starts to feel unstable. The square four doesn't build speed, it detonates into it. Crack the throttle, and instead of a clean surge, you get a hit that feels stacked, uneven, almost impatient. It's like two engines arguing over who gets to fire next. The rhythm never quite settles, and that tension is exactly what makes it exciting. Throw a leg over something like the Suzuki RG 500 Gamma, and it doesn't feel composed. It feels urgent, alive in a way that borders on reckless. This isn't a machine you relax into, it's one you manage. And underneath that chaos is an idea that almost makes sense. Two crankshafts, one for the front cylinders, one for the rear. Stack them together, keep the engine short, and suddenly you've got serious power in a compact space. On paper, it's brilliant. Shorter than an inline four, easier to centralize mass, sharper on paper in every direction that matters. For a moment it worked. Then heat stepped in. The front cylinders live an easy life. Cool air, clean flow, predictable temperatures. The rear pair? They sit behind, breathing whatever heat the front leaves behind. And that difference compounds. Hotter cylinders expand more, lose efficiency, and start wearing faster. Clearances tighten, oil struggles, and the back half of the engine quietly becomes the failure point. Not because engineers didn't try, but because airflow doesn't negotiate. Then you add the second crankshaft. More gears, more timing, more chances for things to fall out of sync. What started as clever packaging turns into mechanical tension, stacked on top of thermal stress. From a build standpoint, it's a nightmare. Expensive to produce, harder to maintain, and never designed to live a long, easy life. This was built to win, not to last. And it didn't last. Because sooner or later, riders figured it out. Power means nothing if the engine can't survive its own heat. That realization didn't lead to moderation, it led to obsession. Because if chaos couldn't be controlled, maybe it could be eliminated entirely. And that's where things take a sharp turn, toward an engine that doesn't tolerate imbalance at all. The inline six. This is what happens when engineers refuse to settle and then overshoot the target. The inline six doesn't behave like an engine. It feels detached, almost unreal. No buzzing through the bars, no pulses breaking up the rhythm, no mechanical texture. Just a smooth, continuous pull that builds so cleanly, it almost feels artificial. Roll on the throttle of something like the Honda CBX 1000 or the Kawasaki Z1300, and the response is eerily consistent. Every firing event is perfectly spaced. No gaps, no hesitation, just a seamless wave of power. You're not controlling it, you're watching it happen. Mechanically, this is as close as reciprocating engines get to perfection. Every force has a partner canceling it out. Pistons move in harmony, eliminating primary shake, secondary vibration, and any tendency for the engine to twist under load. No balancing tricks, no added complexity to fix flaws. The geometry handles everything. It's not clever, it's absolute. But perfection comes with weight and size. 6 cylinders in a row create an engine that dominates the motorcycle around it. It stretches wide across the frame, pushing into your knees and limiting how far the bike can lean. Add the extra components, long crankshaft, additional valves, more rotating mass, and the machine starts to feel heavy, deliberate, almost overbuilt. Nothing about it is subtle, and nothing about it is cheap. These bikes weren't created because they made practical sense. They were built to prove a point, that total smoothness was possible, and they proved it. But in doing so, they exposed a new problem. Because once you achieve perfect balance, the next challenge isn't improving it. It's figuring out how to live with it, which is exactly why engineers didn't abandon the idea. They reshaped it. The flat six. The flat six doesn't feel smooth. It feels absent. No pulse through the bars, no hum in the pegs, No reminder that anything mechanical is happening. You open the throttle, and the response is clean, immediate, almost electric. Not because it's fast, but because nothing interrupts the flow. On machines like the Honda Goldwing GL 1800 Mi, the experience is almost surreal. You're moving quickly, covering miles, but the engine refuses to add drama. It fades into the background completely. That's not refinement, that's elimination. 6 cylinders laid flat, directly opposed. Every piston has a mirror moving the opposite way. Primary forces cancel, secondary motion disappears. No rocking, no shake, just rotation. This isn't balancing, it's the absence of imbalance. And when you remove all disturbance, you remove sensation. That electric feeling riders describe, it's simply what's left when vibration is gone. The weight sits low and spreads wide, anchoring the bike to the road. At slow speeds, it feels stable. At highway pace, it feels unshakable. Long-distance riding stops being work and becomes something closer to coasting. But nothing comes free. That width limits lean. It complicates packaging. This engine will never belong on a tight, aggressive machine, and it isn't cheap. 6 cylinders, large cases, precise tolerances. Everything about it demands resources. But unlike performance engines, this complexity serves longevity. Less vibration means less wear. Even heat means durability. The verdict: this is the end of comfort. Effortless, stable, enduring, but also distant, detached, almost too perfect. Because when you remove every flaw, you also remove the fight. And performance demands a fight. That's where things take a different turn, towards something built not for comfort, but for domination. The V5. This one shouldn't work. 5 cylinders, split unevenly. No symmetry, no clean math, no natural rhythm to lean on. If you showed this layout to an engineer without context, they'd assume something went wrong. And yet it wins. Get near something like the Honda RC211V, and the first thing you notice isn't smoothness, it's tension. The engine never settles. It surges, hesitates, then pulls again, like it's thinking faster than you. Low in the revs, it hits with the weight of a triple. Keep it open, and it stretches out like a 4 that refuses to taper off. It doesn't build power, it hunts for it. That uneven layout, 3 cylinders up front, 2 tucked behind, exists for one reason: drive out of a corner without sacrificing the top end. More firing events early, less bulk overall. It's not elegant, it's calculated. Now here's the part no one puts in the brochure. This engine never balances, not fully. There's always some internal argument happening, forces that don't cancel, motion that doesn't line up. So instead of chasing perfection, engineers manage the disorder. Crank timing, counterweights, firing sequence. They don't fix the problem. They make it useful. And the cost? Forget pricing. Nothing about this is designed for a showroom. Every piece is purpose-built, short-lived, and brutally precise. The V5 isn't a motorcycle engine. It's a race solution that escaped into legend. And once the rules changed, it vanished. Because when you push pistons this far, bend them, stagger them, force them to cooperate, you start running out of room to improve. So the next question isn't how to rearrange them. It's whether you need them at all. And that question leads directly to the next answer: an engine that abandons pistons altogether. The rotary. The rotary doesn't feel like an engine. It feels like something that shouldn't exist. There's no beat to follow, no rise and fall, no sense that anything inside is changing direction. You roll into the throttle, and the power just arrives, smooth, continuous, almost detached from effort. It doesn't thump, it doesn't scream, it hums. Machines like the Suzuki Re5 or the Norton F1 don't behave like motorcycles. They feel like something borrowed from another discipline. Light, eager, almost frictionless. And that's exactly where it misleads you. Because underneath that smooth delivery is a design that avoids one set of problems by creating another that's harder to escape. There are no pistons here, no rods slamming up and down. Instead, a triangular rotor spins inside a shaped housing, dividing space into moving chambers that handle intake, compression, combustion, and exhaust all at once. Everything rotates in one direction, no abrupt stops, no violent reversals. That's why it feels so calm. It should be perfect. But the entire system depends on one fragile truth: sealing. At the tips of that rotor sit thin edges that must stay perfectly, pressed against the housing while spinning through heat, pressure, and changing geometry. They wear, they lose contact, and when they do, compression fades, power drops, and oil consumption climbs because the engine has to feed itself just to survive. Heat builds unevenly. Efficiency suffers. The same shape that makes it smooth makes it difficult to control combustion. It's not a small flaw. It's built into the idea. The rotary is clever, bold, different, but it asks too much from too little surface. And when that limit is reached, there's nowhere left to go, except away from pistons entirely and towards something far more extreme. And that's where the next chapter begins: the turbine. If you like this video, hit that like button. And if you want to support this kind of no-nonsense breakdown even more, become a member, get early access, and stay ahead of what's coming next. Turbine isn't an engine. It's what happens when someone bolts an aircraft idea onto two wheels and calls it transportation. There's no idle the way you understand it. No thump, no rhythm, no sense of individual events happening inside the machine. Just a rising whine that sharpens into something aggressive. Roll the throttle, and nothing dramatic happens at first, then everything happens at once. A swell of thrust builds, gathers, and keeps climbing like it forgot where the limit is. Climb onto something like the MT-TY2K Superbike, and the experience disconnects from everything you associate with motorcycles. There's no cadence to read, no pulses to time, just a continuous force pushing forward, indifferent to your expectations. It doesn't feel quick. It feels unavoidable, and just a little unsafe. Inside, there are no pistons chasing each other up and down, no crankshaft translating chaos into rotation. Air is pulled in, compressed, mixed with fuel, ignited, and expelled, all in one uninterrupted loop. The turbine spins in a single direction, producing power as long as you feed it. That means no reciprocating mass, no primary shake, no secondary buzz, no twisting forces trying to tear the engine sideways. Mechanically, it's as smooth as it gets, and when it comes to output, it doesn't think in normal limits. Turbines thrive on speed. The faster they spin, the better they work, which is why they dominate the sky. Shrink that idea down, and you get a power plant that delivers far more than any comparable piston setup. So where does it fall apart? Temperature, not warm, not hot, extreme. The kind of heat that demands exotic metals and constant airflow just to survive. On a motorcycle, that heat doesn't disappear. It radiates into everything nearby. Components, bodywork, even the rider. Then there's response. You twist, you wait, and then it arrives. That delay, small but real, makes precise control feel unnatural. And at anything less than full output, efficiency collapses. Fuel consumption climbs into territory that makes traditional engines look conservative. Building one isn't expensive, it's unreasonable. Aerospace materials, tight tolerances, specialized assembly. You're not manufacturing a motorcycle engine. You're adapting a jet and hoping it behaves. And that's the point. This was never meant to be practical. It was meant to exist. The MT-TY2K Superbike proved that you could take something designed for flight and force it onto the road. Overwhelming power, jet exhaust, and a presence that makes everything else feel ordinary. But once the novelty fades, reality sets in. Heat you can't ignore. Fuel you can't justify. Control that never feels natural. This doesn't solve the problems of engines. It steps around them and creates new ones. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Because if this is what happens when you remove every traditional limitation, why does it feel less usable, not more? At some point, chasing extremes stops making sense, and that's where everything comes into focus. What actually matters in an engine. The paint can be stripped away, the sound can be ignored, the story can be forgotten. What is left is simple and somewhat uncomfortable. It becomes clear that every engine you have seen is, in fact, a compromise. Not a preference, not a personality, a trade with limits that don't bend. The moment parts start moving, you run into the same walls: balance, heat, cost, and space. You don't solve them. You work around them. You want smooth. Build something like the Honda CBX 1000. It's seamless and wide, heavy, and impractical. You want compact performance. Look at the Ducati Panigale Vive 4. Tight, powerful, and packed with heat and complexity. You want simple. Try the Honda XR 650L. Cheap, durable, and vibrating like it means it. Some engines survive because they make sense. The Honda CB75 worked within the limits and scaled. Others survive because people choose them anyway. The Harley-Davidson shovelhead isn't refined, but it connects. And the rest, they push too far. Rotary, V5, turbine. Brilliant and short-lived. There's no perfect engine. There's only the compromise you're willing to live with. If this video changed how you look at engines, even slightly, you're already ahead of most riders on the road. The next video goes deeper into the machines that define how you ride and choose. Continue the ride, subscribe, and if you want early access and deeper insight, become a member and hit like. It tells us what to build next.